Picture this. You spend 3 hours studying for a test. You read through your notes twice. You highlight the important parts. You feel ready. The next morning you sit down and half of it is gone. Not hazy, gone. You stare at the question and it's like you never saw the material in your life. That's happened to most people reading this. And here's the part that actually bothers me. It's not because you didn't try hard enough. It's because you were using the wrong method entirely. Neuroscientists have studied how memory forms for decades. They know exactly which study techniques work and which ones don't. Highlighting doesn't work. Rereading barely moves the needle. Cramming the night before, gone within 48 hours. And yet those are the 3 things most schools tell you to do. Meanwhile, Japanese students are memorizing thousands of written characters, some of the most visually complex symbols in any writing system on Earth, and they're holding on to them for years. Not because they're grinding for 8 hours a day. Not because there's some different category of smart. They're using a different system, a better one, and it maps almost exactly onto what the neuroscience says actually works. This video is going to walk you through that system. 5 methods, real science behind each one, specific ways to use them starting today. Before we get into the methods, there's one thing worth understanding first, because without it, the techniques feel like random tips instead of a connected system. There's a concept in memory research called the forgetting curve. A German psychologist named Hermann Ebbinghaus documented it in the 1880s, and it's been replicated so many times since then that it's basically treated as fact. Here's what it says. Without any effort to reinforce a memory, your brain will lose roughly 70% of new information within 24 hours. Not 24 days, 24 hours. Think about that for a second. You could sit down tonight, study for 2 hours, and wake up tomorrow having retained about 30% of it. If you don't touch that material again for a week, the number drops further. This isn't a personal failure. It's biology. Your brain is constantly making decisions about what to store long-term and what to discard. New information that only appeared once, briefly, with no follow-up, the brain treats that as low priority. It files it in the probably not important pile and eventually clears it out. The methods that actually work all have one thing in common. They speak the brain's language. They tell your brain, through repetition and active retrieval, that a piece of information is worth keeping. Japan's school system, particularly its approach to language learning, mathematics, and structured daily practice, lines up with this almost perfectly. Not because Japanese educators set out to design a neuroscience-backed curriculum, more that the cultural emphasis on daily repetition and incremental mastery happened to land on the right answer. So that's the frame. Now here's how it actually works. Quick pause before we go further. If you've ever studied hard and still failed a test, or read a book and remembered almost nothing a week later, this video is specifically for you. Drop a comment below, just say, "I forget everything," and I'll know you're still watching. It also helps this video reach more people who need it. Okay, Method 1. Method 1. Active recall. Stop putting information in. Start pulling it out. Most people study by consuming. They read the chapter. They watch the lecture. They look over their notes. And all of that feels like learning because you're spending time with the material. But reading something is not the same as knowing it. Recognition is not memory. Here's a simple test. Close your eyes right now and try to recite the last paragraph you read from memory. Most people can't do it. Because reading is passive, your eyes moved over the words, but your brain didn't have to do much work. Active recall flips this around entirely. Instead of reviewing your notes, you close them. You take a blank page, and you write down everything you remember about the topic from scratch. No looking, no hints. It feels uncomfortable. That's the point. The mental effort of searching for information is what strengthens the neural pathway. Every time you try to retrieve something, even if you get it wrong, and then correct yourself, the memory gets a little stronger. Japanese students use this in a specific way when learning kanji, the Chinese-derived characters used in Japanese writing. Rather than tracing characters over and over while looking at them, students write from memory, check their answer, note the mistake, and try again. The error itself is part of the process. It signals to the brain, this is information that matters. You can apply this to anything. After a lecture, close your laptop and write what you remember. After reading a chapter, summarize it without looking. Before a test, attempt to explain the material to yourself out loud, as if you're teaching someone else. Teaching it is actually one of the most powerful versions of active recall. When you explain something, you immediately hit the gaps in your understanding. You can't fake your way through explaining something you don't actually know. This is Method 1. It alone will change how much you retain, but it works even better when paired with Method 2.
Method 2. The Kumon method. Small daily doses beat long weekly sessions. Kumon is a Japanese supplemental education program started in the 1950s by a math teacher named Toichiro Kumon. His son was struggling with second-grade arithmetic, so Toru created a set of worksheets short, daily, designed to build on each other gradually. The program spread across Japan and eventually into 50 countries. The core idea is almost offensive in its simplicity. Do a little bit every day, and make sure you fully understand each step before moving to the next. No gaps, no rushing ahead, no skipping the parts that feel slow. Most students do the opposite. They ignore a subject until a test is coming, sit down for a 4-hour session, absorb what they can, and move on. The problem with this approach is that it treats learning like a to-do list item rather than a physical skill. And skills don't work that way. Think about learning to play guitar. Nobody gets good by playing for 6 hours on a Saturday and then not touching the instrument for 2 weeks. You get good by playing a little every day, building muscle memory, correcting mistakes in real time, and stacking one small improvement on top of another. Academic learning is the same. Your brain needs repeated exposure spaced over time to build strong long-term memories. One long session gives you the feeling of learning. Daily short sessions give you the actual result. Practically, this means taking a subject and committing to 20 minutes a day, not 2 hours on Sunday. It means finishing each session having fully understood what you covered, not just having touched it. And it means building sequentially, so new information has something solid to attach to. The research backs this up clearly. Distributed practice, which is the academic term for what Kumon does, consistently outperforms massed practice and study after study. The gap in long-term retention between the two is not small. It's large.
Method 3. Spaced repetition review right before you forget. This one is probably the most scientifically validated method on this list, and also the one most people have never heard of. The concept comes back to Ebbinghaus and the forgetting curve. If your memory of something decays over time in a predictable pattern, then the optimal time to review it is right before it disappears, not the day after you learned it, and not 3 weeks later. Spaced repetition is a system that schedules your reviews based on how well you know something. Items you remember easily get reviewed less often. Items you keep forgetting get reviewed more often. The spacing between reviews grows as your memory gets stronger. In practice, this is often done with flashcards, physical ones, or digital ones using apps that automate the scheduling. Japanese students learning vocabulary use this constantly. A student might have 2,000 flashcards in rotation, each one scheduled to appear at the right time based on their personal history with that card. But you don't need an app to use the concept. The principle is just this. Don't wait until the night before a test to review material. Instead, review it once the day after you learned it, then 3 days later, then a week later, then 2 weeks later. Each review resets the decay clock and extends how long the memory holds. The reason Japanese students avoid cramming isn't discipline or cultural pressure, it's that cramming simply doesn't work for long-term retention, and their system is built around the alternative. They're not reviewing the night before because they already reviewed it 4 times at the right intervals. One thing worth saying honestly, spaced repetition requires setup. You have to track what you've learned and when. That feels like overhead at first, but the alternative is relearning the same material over and over because you never properly stored it the first time. That's the actual waste of time. Method 4. Kaizen, the philosophy that makes all of this sustainable. Kaizen is a Japanese word that roughly translates to improvement through small, continuous change. It was developed as a manufacturing philosophy after World War II. Toyota used it to build cars, but the underlying idea applies everywhere, including how you study. The reason most people fail with new study habits isn't that the habits are too hard. It's that they try to do too much too fast. They watch a video like this one, feel motivated, decide they're going to study 3 hours a day using 5 new techniques, and sustain it for about 4 days before the whole thing collapses. Kaizen says, make the change so small it's almost embarrassing. Don't add 3 hours. Add 10 minutes. Don't overhaul your entire study system. Change one thing. Do it until it's automatic, then add something else. In practice for studying, this might look like spend 2 minutes doing active recall on yesterday's material before you start anything new. That's it, 2 minutes. Then after a week, add 2 minutes of spaced repetition review. Then after another week, add 1 focused reading session. You're not trying to become a different person overnight. You're trying to build a system that keeps working when motivation runs out, which it will. Motivation is unreliable. Systems are not. The Kaizen mindset also changes how you measure progress. Instead of asking, did I master this topic today? You ask, do I understand this slightly better than I did yesterday? That's a question you can almost always say yes to. And those daily yes compound over months into something significant. Japanese schools emphasize this approach partly because of how the language itself is learned. There are around 2,000 kanji characters a student is expected to know by the end of high school. Nobody learns those in a sprint. They learn roughly 5 new characters per week, consistently, for years. It's not impressive on any given day. Over a decade, it's a complete written language. Method 5. Focus rituals train your brain to enter learning mode. This last method is the one that ties everything together, and it's also the one that sounds the strangest until you understand what's actually happening biologically. Your brain has a limited amount of focused attention available at any time. It doesn't switch instantly between distraction and deep work. There's a warm-up period. When you sit down to study while also having your phone nearby, a TV on in the background, and 3 browser tabs open, your brain never fully commits. It stays in a split attention state, which is exactly the state where almost nothing gets stored long-term. Japanese students in more traditional academic settings often use small rituals to signal the start of focused work. Arranging materials in a specific order, sitting in the same seat, a short period of silence before beginning. These aren't superstitions. They're behavioral anchors, consistent cues that tell your brain a specific type of work is about to begin. Over time, the ritual and the focused state become linked. The cue triggers the state automatically. The way the smell of coffee in the morning triggers alertness before you've taken a sip. Your brain learns. When this happens, that's what we do next. You can build your own version of this. The specifics matter less than the consistency. Pick a physical location you only use for studying. Use the same background sound or silence every time. Start every session with the same 2-minute active recall warm-up. The point is that your brain needs a consistent on-ramp. The other half of this is removing friction in the other direction, making distractions slightly harder to access. Phone in another room. Browser tabs closed. Notifications off. This sounds obvious, but it's genuinely underestimated. Every time you check your phone mid-study session, it takes your brain several minutes to return to the same depth of focus. That's not an opinion. Attention researchers have measured it. The cost of a single distraction is much higher than the distraction itself. When you're in genuine deep focus, your brain processes and encodes information faster. The same material that takes 90 distracted minutes to absorb can often be absorbed in 30 focused ones. The goal isn't more time studying. It's better time. Here's how to actually put this together starting this week. Not someday. This week. Day 1. Pick one subject you're currently learning or need to learn. After your next study session, close everything and spend 5 minutes writing down what you remember. Don't look at your notes. Just write. That's active recall. You just did it. Day 2. Set up a simple review schedule. Write down 3 things you want to remember long-term. Review them today. Put a reminder to review them again in 3 days. That's spaced repetition with almost zero overhead. Day 3. Pick your study location and your start ritual. Maybe it's making tea. Maybe it's clearing your desk. Maybe it's 2 minutes of silence. Whatever it is, do the same thing every time you sit down to study. That's 3 days. 3 small changes. That's kaizen in action. The methods don't need to be implemented all at once. They just need to start. And each one you add will reinforce the others. Active recall works better when you're focused. Spaced repetition works better when you're consistent. Consistency is what kaizen protects. Here's the honest version of what I want to leave you with. These 5 methods are not complicated. Any one of them will improve your memory if you use it consistently. But there's a version of watching this video where you think that was interesting and then go back to highlighting and cramming and nothing changes. The gap between people who retain information well and people who don't isn't intelligence. It's not even effort, really. It's method. You can grind for hours using the wrong approach and get worse results than someone who studies 20 focused minutes using the right one. So pick one method, not 5. 1. Try it for the next 7 days before you add anything else. Active recall is probably the best place to start. It's the highest impact change with the lowest setup cost. After a lecture, a chapter, or a study session, close everything and write what you remember. That's it. If you want a simple way to remember which 5 methods we covered, I'll put a summary on screen right now. Screenshot it. It's faster than notes. And if this video actually helped you, not just felt useful, but actually changed how you're going to study, share it with someone who's been struggling. They're probably using the same broken system you were using before you watched this. See you in the next one.